Okay, well, welcome everyone to the National Diabetes Program. This is our support group for this program that's really meant to help you address diabetes by targeting its root cause using nutrition. So my name is Noah. I am a dietitian and one of your co-hosts. And joining me, as always, is Em. Hey, Em, how's it going today?
Hey Noah, good. How are you doing?
Doing great.
Yeah, thank you everyone for being here. And please feel free to introduce yourself and put where you're tuning in from. We always love seeing that in the chat. And also, while those are coming in this week, we wanted to go over if you were here last week or if just something comes to mind in the moment. We wanted to see how it went with the goal last week, which, if what we remember, the goal or the challenge was to try a travel friendly recipe. So please, if you've made anything like the banana oatmeal cookies or something else that you found really helpful when you were traveling or out for a day, please put those in there. We would love, love, love to see that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So go ahead, chime in the chat. Use that feature to its full extent. Let us know if you've tried any good recipes that work for that travel. And also, the chat is great for questions. So if you have anything that you've been curious about, maybe throughout the week or as we go through the content, feel free to put those questions there. We have Stephanie and Shannon, two of our dietitians, ready to answer those questions. Em and I will also be pulling a few out and talking about them out loud with the whole group. So if you want to just skip the middleman and raise your hand, you can use the raise hand feature and we'll ask you to come off mute. Just do keep in mind that we can't give personalized medical advice.
Yeah, so let's see. We have a good variety of folks here. We have someone, Connie, tuning in from Norfolk, Virginia. Phil, greetings from Indianapolis. Welcome. Marcia and Lee, always nice to see you from Tacoma, Washington. Hello. Lynn from Texas. MT saying hi from PA. We got Paula from LA. Yes, go Dodgers to those Dodger fans out there. Awesome. Keep those coming in. And yeah, if anyone made, a special, something new, even for Halloween, a special snack that they made and enjoyed, we'd love to see those, as we're going through class today. We have Patrick tuning in from rainy Spokane. Hi, Patrick. Oh, Yvonne said she made the oatmeal and banana cookies. Excellent. I hope you enjoyed those. I just love how easy they are.
Mhm. That's great. Um, yeah, a few of the travel recipes trickling in. So oh, and also I see that MT mentioned going to a Cuban restaurant um, when he was younger, and just now at home made a veggie paella, which I'm not sure how well that travels, but it is certainly an international cuisine that just sort of smells of travel and it sounds like a really delicious dish.
Yeah, thank you, MT, for sharing that. Made it last night. And Jill said she made some white bean enchiladas this weekend and tried the take a cooler tip on a recent trip. That's awesome. Packing your cooler with some items that you can have along the way or when you reach your destination is always a lovely option. Yeah, so keep those coming in, but I'm really excited to share all this, some of the talk about recipes and cooking really got me thinking about MasterChef UK series. I'm not sure if anyone watches, but the season finale was recently. And although the vegan finalist did not get the trophy, Miss Sophie Segru was the first ever vegan finalist, and she wowed the crowd and the judges with her creations. Things like, I'll see if I can pronounce it, chamomile and agave leek tart touton. And she made some faux short ribs and served them in tacos with salsa verde and charred corn. So she made these amazing creations and she outcooked over 60 other contestants. So it really speaks to how talented she is. But more importantly, even as it speaks to how delicious a vegan diet can really be. So that was really neat to see.
Yeah, I mean, what a cool story. I love that when vegan eat food and, healthful food gets to be featured on shows like this. So I know we talk a lot about the health benefits of a vegan, low-fat vegan diet for reducing your risk of diabetes or even reversing it. But the flavor is so important too. That's really what makes this diet taste good and keeps us eating it for the long term. So luckily going vegan doesn't mean you need to compromise on that.
Yeah, and speaking of delicious, I'm seeing the picture of MT's paella looking great in the chat. Thank you for sharing that, MT. Yeah, so as we continue on, like usual, we like to share the class worksheet, which you probably received in the reminder emails, but also we can post it here in the chat so that way you can follow along on your computer, or if you had a chance to print it out ahead of time or now, that way you can take notes as you're going through class today. Now, today's topic is how to succeed in social situations while on your health journey, which we think this is a great time for it for holidays and upcoming gatherings. We'll also have a guest speaker, Ms. Darylyn Berryman, who will share her incredible success story. But first, let me introduce Dr. Roxy Becker, who will walk us through a reminder of the basics, what's happening in our cells, and why it's so important to address it with good nutrition. Hi, Dr. Becker. Welcome and over to you.
Hey, thanks for having me back. And I think we should not allow people to send pictures of delicious food in the chat because it's making all of us hungry now at lunchtime. So, MT, it looks absolutely delicious. But either I think you need to invite us over for lunch or keep those pictures to yourself. That looks absolutely delicious. All right, so let's talk about what's going on in our cells. And I have right here. So we're going to have a bit of a pop quiz today, and let's see who can remember what we've been talking about each week when we review this. So let's start off first by asking, why is insulin so important? Why do we need insulin? Let's see if anyone can put it in the chat. Remember, insulin's a hormone. When we eat food that has carbohydrates, insulin gets secreted from our pancreas. And let's see, why do we need this hormone? Yvonne, it puts the sugar into the muscles. Yes, you are spot on. Patrick regulates blood sugar. Lots of people saying energy. Yes, you're all correct. So let's take a look if I can get this video to work. So, glucose or sugar from carbohydrates cannot get into our cells without insulin. That's why it's so important. So, before that insulin attached there, you can see it's just bouncing off the cells. It can't get into the cells without this hormone. So, insulin comes along, it binds to its receptor after we've eaten a meal with carbohydrates, and it unlocks our cells so that that glucose can get from our blood into our cells. Just like you all said, we need that in our cells so that we can produce energy. If it's sitting in our blood, it's not doing any good. So that's why insulin is so important. But when we eat foods like this, we're sabotaging our bodies on a cellular level. When we eat foods that are high in fat, especially saturated fat from eggs, bacon, cheeseburgers, pepperoni, cheese, all of these fatty foods, especially when they come from animal products, well, what happens? Where does some of that fat get stored? Unfortunately, it gets stored in places where it shouldn't be, like our muscle cells. So you can see here, there's this fat building up inside our muscle cells. And who can remember? Why is this so bad for our cells? What is the consequence when we have this fat sitting inside our muscle cells where it shouldn't be? Give you a clue. It's linked to the first question I asked. Remember, insulin is so important because it unlocks our cells. So when we have this fat in our muscle cells, how does that affect insulin? Yes, Patrick, cells can't absorb the blood sugar. So this fat prevents our insulin from working. So insulin still comes along. It knocks on the cells. It's saying, look, we've got all the sugar sitting in our blood. We need to get it into our muscle cells so that we can use the sugar to produce energy. But when we have this buildup of fat in our muscle cells, that insulin doesn't work, unfortunately. And our cells stay closed, the sugar stays in our blood, and that's why we see that our blood sugar levels rise higher and higher because it's not getting into our cells where it needs to be. The good news is that this is largely due to our diet. So that means when we understand the cause of this buildup of fat, which is our diet, we know how we can reverse this process. So we get that fat out of the diet, we get those animal products out of the diet, we focus on these complex carbohydrates, lots of fiber. And what happens? Well, we get the fat out of our cells and our insulin starts to work again. So we go back to the first video. We eat something that contains carbohydrates like oats or maybe some beans. Our blood sugar levels rise as we absorb all of that glucose from our meal, and our insulin works again. So insulin comes along, it unlocks our cells, and we can get that sugar from our blood into our cells so that we can use it to produce energy, just like you all said in the chat. So these classes are a message of hope. Even though some of us have insulin resistance, we can reverse it. And if that isn't the best news that we've heard all week, I don't know what is. Aside from the MasterChef finalist, runner-up, being on a plant-based diet. So the good news is you don't have to sacrifice flavor. You can enjoy lots of wonderful plant-based foods. And something I hear often from people once they start a plant-based diet is they try foods they'd never even heard of, try herbs, flavors they've never even heard of. And they say it expands their palate because they're introduced to all these new foods. So if you're looking for inspiration, head over to watch the MasterChef in action. And I think we have a few minutes for questions if anyone has any. Back to you, Em.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Becker. Yeah, please feel free to either raise your hand by going to the React button, or you can post those in the chat. We'd be happy to answer a couple live.
Send us those questions. I'm just encouraged by Phil, just the confidence of your statement. It can definitely be reversed. We all feel that strongly, and I'm glad that that message has gotten through to you, and hopefully some others here too. Give another minute or so for questions. Maybe Dr. Becker, if you could just speak to a common question we get. I know we've talked about it on this program before, but how long does it usually take before, if someone is eating a low-fat vegan diet, how long does it take before they can expect to see some positive results with their blood sugar?
Yeah, that's a great question, and we get it so frequently here, Nora, and it can depend on a couple of factors. But what we've seen is that quite literally within a couple of days, 1 week, 2 weeks, people can start to see their blood sugars improve. And one of the factors that really makes a difference is just how much you commit to this. So when people say, you know, I'm slowly going to increase my fiber, or I'm going to add the odd fruit or vegetable here or there, we see that they don't tend to do as well as people who decide to jump all in from the start and say, I'm following this 100% low fat, plant-based. We see that they tend to do a lot better than people who just, you know, eat the odd plant-based meal here or there. So I know Dr. Barnard loves the analogy, take it like an antibiotic. You know, you're not going to skip a dose when you don't feel like it. No, you take it morning, noon, and night as it's prescribed. And the same thing works with diet and lifestyle changes. The more closely you adhere to it, the better the results will be. But like I said, quite literally within a week, we see that some people start to improve their blood sugars.
Great. Well, thank you for that answer. I'm seeing this wasn't necessarily phrased as a question, but Rosalina just talked about some of the responses that she gets from people when she talks about eating carbs, and that people will often say, cut out carbs or at least minimize them, and that doesn't sound right. Now, Shannon, if it's all right, maybe I'll call on you, because I know you see a lot of patients in the clinic and maybe run into this. What do you tell people when they maybe have a little bit of fear around eating too many carbohydrates?
Yes, thanks. No, I was just typing up a response. So this is great. Thanks, Rosalina, for your question. This is something that unfortunately we'll hear often, and I'm sure almost everybody here has heard that at some point, that carbohydrates are bad, or maybe someone's told you don't eat carbohydrates for if you have diabetes. But as Dr. Becker just showed us, really the underlying issue is this buildup of fat in the cell. So if we're really addressing that underlying issue of improving the insulin resistance, then our bodies can process carbohydrates just fine. So really it's not, the carbohydrates themselves aren't the issue. It's usually what is associated with the carbohydrates. Say, take like a baked potato, for example, and what are people maybe adding on top of that? Sour cream and cheese and bacon. So the carbohydrate themselves is okay. It's really just the fat that we really want to reduce.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think that clarifies it for a lot of people, and we've talked about it a lot in this class. Hopefully, everyone who's here feels ready to take that information to the skeptics that they encounter in their everyday life. And then,
if I can just jump
yeah.
in here as well, sorry, it just reminds me of a question someone asked a couple of weeks ago where they said, but these people following low carbohydrate diets, why are they not getting type 2 diabetes? We just don't see it. And there was actually a study published in September 2025, this year, just 2 months ago. And it found that when people ate low carbohydrate diets centered around animal protein and fat, they actually had a higher risk of type 2 diabetes than people who were either following more of a, standard Western more balanced diet, and more than people who followed high carbohydrate diets when those carbs were coming from whole food sources. So we maybe just are not hearing about the people that follow low carbohydrate diets that end up getting type 2 diabetes, but it is associated with a higher risk of diabetes. And again, that goes back to that fat building up in the cells and causing insulin resistance. So it's definitely not the answer to insulin resistance, even though we see it a lot on social media.
Great. Yeah, thank you for adding that. I want to take one last question before we move on from Richard, who asked about specifically if we have a handout that summarizes the amounts of protein, fat, carbohydrates we all need in our diet. Now, we do have a handout. It might not have specific numbers, but Stephanie, I might call on you. I know we have kind of a way of approaching this question that I wonder if you could address specifically with the power plate.
Yeah, with the power plate, we typically, we don't focus on specific numbers. We have on our website, which I can share in the chat afterwards, kind of the general amount of protein someone is supposed to have. But really, if you're eating a wide variety, you're eating enough to maintain your weight or to feel energized and feel good and to feel satisfied with whole food plant-based, you're getting all the carbohydrates, all the fats, all the protein, because actually all foods have some fat and all foods have protein. So, and then all these plant foods have carbohydrates as well. So you're going to naturally fall into those numbers. But we do have some resources if you're looking for generals. But we still don't stick to specific numbers for individuals.
Hopefully that answers your question, Patrick, I believe, or Richard. Yeah, I've seen a few more questions come in. We have another space for questions later in the presentation, so keep those coming. Stephanie and Shannon will be answering them in the chat. We are going to, at this point though, transition into a little bit of a presentation on the topic of the day. Em has already alluded to this, but we're going to talk about social situations. Before we do that, I would love to just get a little bit of read of the room. So having looked at the names of all of you in the chat, and I'm just seeing a lot of familiar folks, which is so encouraging to us that you keep coming back. But we'd love to know, what are the successes you've experienced so far? For those of you who've been coming for some time, what has been working well? Maybe even you started attending last week. Did you have any successes that you took away from that came out of the presentation you made it to last week? I would love it if you could post in the chat just some of the positive things that have been happening. We just love to know what's been working well. And we'll give give some attention to those as they come in. But I do want to jump in to our presentation. So we're going to be talking about how to succeed in social situations. With Thanksgiving and Christmas right around the corner, it's likely that all of us will find ourselves in group settings, eating meals together. And that can be a challenge as someone who is following a low-fat vegan diet. So let's talk about a few tips for how to navigate those situations. First, we like to call this our really our first step, and this is communicating your why. So it really helps to know clearly to yourself, to know yourself why you're following a low-fat vegan diet. It might be things like that you've learned that a low-fat vegan diet can improve your diabetes. I think that's probably a common one in this group. Or maybe that it can do other things like reduce your joint pain. Or even that you're trying to lose weight and you've heard that a plant-based diet can be really beneficial for that. Whatever your primary motivators are, it really helps to know them and just have them forefront in your mind. So when these come up, the topic comes up, you're able to explain that to people. So in your worksheet, if you have that nearby, go ahead and write down I believe it's question number 2, what those main motivators are. It can really be helpful to have that in writing. We're actually going to back up for point number 2 and talk about what to do before you even land in a social situation. So consider, for example, that you're invited to go to dinner somewhere. Some friends are having you over. Sometimes if you know enough in advance, there might be the opportunity to offer to bring a dish along to share. This is actually, it might seem like a simple gesture, but it's a really powerful one that I'm going to explain some really key things that it does. Bringing a dish can feel really natural if you're going to a potluck event. But even if it's not, maybe the friends who have invited you over say, "Oh, we're gonna cook a meal for you." It can really still be a great time to offer to bring something. And the reason for this is that you really don't want to hide the fact that that you are eating a vegan diet. So by offering to bring a vegan dish, you're letting your host know that this is something that you're following. You also really don't want to be pushy about your vegan diet. And by offering to bring something, you're really positioning yourself more as a solution rather than a problem that your host has to deal with. So you could say something like, "Hey, I'm doing a vegan diet now, and I don't want to put any extra trouble on you to make a separate meal or a special dish. Could I bring something?" You could maybe even offer to let it be something that everyone gets to try. So what this does is it helps ensure, even if it doesn't quite guarantee that you're going to have something to eat. The host can respond in a few different ways. They might say, "Oh, that sounds great. Please do. That's awesome. Go ahead and bring your dish then." If they say no, "Oh, we've got it. We'll take care of it," at least you let them know, and that goes a long ways. So kind of whatever happens after making this offer, there's really only positive outcomes to come from it. So we highly recommend offering to bring a dish. All right, so let's move on. So we've talked about our main motivators, sort of the what to say, but also let's talk about the how to say it. So we really want to stay positive and engage people's curiosity. You could use lines like this one: "Thank the person for making a meal or putting together a plate for you." But just say like, "Hey, I've changed my diet recently, and I'm really seeing a lot of great improvements. I'll go ahead and make my own plate." That's really trying to stay positive in the situation, even if you're being presented a plate with food that you're not able to eat. Second sort of sub-tip in this category is appeal to meaning. Now, a plant-based, vegan, low-fat diet for us is really meaningful. It's helping us prevent and reverse disease, but other people might not necessarily know that. So if you can kind of call attention to what this diet means for you, that's going to be a really powerful thing that no one's really going to argue with, and it kind of lets them in to appreciating the diet similar to the way you do. All right, tip number 3 is encourage participation. So it really goes a long ways if you are able to invite other people to support you. So our organization, we do some of our own research here. And some years back, we had a study that we were doing. We were looking into the health benefits or health effects of a vegan diet. And there was someone who was in the study, and at work, she had this coworker who kept dangling animal-based foods that she wasn't able to eat in front of her, just kind of getting on her case about it. Really unnecessary stuff. And it's really unfortunate when that kind of thing happens to a person. So one day, this person in the study said to her coworker, "Hey, you've always been a really big help at work, but I could actually really use your help with this diet thing too. Sometimes at these events or maybe at lunch, it gets tricky. There's a lot of foods that are hard to avoid. I wonder if you would be able to help me in that and just keep an eye out for any things that I maybe should help that I need to avoid." And the fact that this participant invited this person to help kind of flattered them a little bit with, mentioning that they've been a really big help. It totally transformed their relationship. This person became their biggest advocate. It was suddenly a friend and an ally in this study participant's eating pattern, rather than someone who's a little bit more adversarial. So ask people to support you. Don't be afraid to do that, and sprinkle in maybe a little bit of flattery or a compliment just to help move things along. Next is invite others to experiment with you. So this could look like trying a dish that you brought to a party. It can look at some other ways too, including learning about how to make dishes, maybe trying a new recipe, sharing a resource. You can invite friends and family to maybe attend a group that is supportive for you in your community. We have these Building Healthy Community groups all around the country. If you're plugged in, it can really be beneficial to bring them along. We have Food for Life is a program that we run, and if you want to, I think it would be a great idea to ask a friend or family member to attend a class with you. And then finally, just involve people in the whole process of food shopping, preparing the meal, and then cleaning up. The more you can get people involved, the more invested they're going to be. All right, our 4th tip is to ask for what you need. People around you don't necessarily know how they can be a support to you, even if they want to. So it really is a great idea to just say what would be most helpful. Things like, "Hey, this vegan recipe that you found, that you went out of your way to find, it looks amazing. Would you mind just leaving out the oil? It's really helpful with trying to fight my diabetes." So that's a way that you can thank someone for the things that they're trying to do, and also let them know gentle little nudges that, hey, this is a way that you can take the next step towards supporting me. All right, our 5th tip is to focus on the socializing at gatherings. Anytime you're spending time with friends or family, whether they're new or old friends, really the main focus of that is the time in the relationships with the people. There might be food there, and that's great. And if you can eat it, even better. But if you can't, it's okay to just focus on the people that you're around and not get too hung up on the fact that food might not be as you would have cooked it if you were the host. So focus on those connections, find joy in the people that you're around. And it's kind of as a pro tip, if you are at a social gathering and the conversation keeps coming back to your diet, you can just go ahead and say, "Hey, this diet has been a really cool thing for me. I actually prefer not to talk about it at meal times. We could just change the subject, and if you have something ready, like, hey, Uncle Greg, I'd love to hear about the new dog that you got, or have just a topic ready to go. that can be a great way to take the focus off of food if it feels uncomfortable. And our final tip is to always keep learning. So we're a little biased. This is our career, our profession, and it's our passion, food and health. But it can be for you as well. So the more you're able to learn, the more confidently you'll be able to respond to questions that you get from other people. Knowing more is also only going to help support your own health journey. There's so much out there to learn. The basics we hope are pretty easy to master, but there's just a world out there of recipes and health information that's so fun to go and explore. And we just think it's a lot of fun. So look for documentaries. These are documentaries that we've shared at the end of our presentations in the past, but Forks Over Knives and What the Health are two great ones. And then so many books to choose from as well. These are just two, one from Dr. Barnard, who sometimes is on this program, another one from Dr. Greger. We highly recommend them both. All right, so I would love to hear from you on the topic of resources. What are some of the things that have been most helpful for you or that have really sparked some joy as you've continued learning about healthy eating? Go ahead and share those responses in the chat. I think we would all really benefit from knowing what resources have been inspiring to you. So Em, maybe I'll see if you've got any, you've probably been watching the chat more closely than I have. What have you been seeing?
Oh my goodness. So many amazing amazing successes. We have Phil. He said he's been following a plant-based lifestyle for over 4 years, and he reversed his type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, and fatty liver disease. And he said he also lost 80 pounds and his vision is slowly improving. So Phil, that is amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And you shared some other successes as well about eating more fresh whole foods and trying different things and then helping others with your knowledge. That's amazing. And so many other things came through. I saw Eve said she's experienced some weight loss. Congratulations, Eve. And Yvonne said when she was ordering out, she got veggies with sides instead of a main. Maybe it was hard to find a low-fat vegan option. Great job there, Yvonne. And then Marcia and Lee said they reviewed a menu first before they went out to a Japanese restaurant. So I am blown away by all the amazing things that everyone is doing. So yeah, keep up the great work, everyone. And yeah, let's see if we have any resources that people are finding particularly helpful.
Yeah, I see Rosalina mentioned Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn's book on reversing heart disease. That is, Dr. Esselstyn is a longtime practitioner of this diet and a really, really powerful advocate for health. So thank you for sharing that one. I see also Wilma mentions PCRM recipes. That makes us feel good. And also YouTube searches. Yeah, it can be a little, especially if you know some groups that post video content on YouTube, that can be a really, really cool place to go. Also the Exam Room podcast. We love that one so much. So many great experts that come through that podcast and share a lot of important and transformative health advice, but also stories too.
Yeah, we're seeing some more great ones come in. So keep those coming. Those are going to be great resources for other participants and for us as well. And so thank you so much. But we're going to move on just with a little more content. And we're going to start with tips for kids. If you have kids in your household or grandkids or you're around kids in any way, we just want to share a few tips with you. So it's helpful to involve the whole family in the meal preparation and the cooking process and even the shopping process. That can be a lot of fun, going to a farmer's market or a pumpkin patch and finding some nice produce. Offer a variety of options is always a nice idea, maybe different spreads to dip veggies in or to put on a sandwich. Make food fun. For example, making little faces on toast of different animals is always a neat idea, or using a cookie cutter to make different shapes and sizes of foods. lead by example. So if you can show that you're enjoying low-fat vegan options that are colorful and very nourishing, then this can help your kids as well. And then keep trying different things. If they don't like, say, chickpeas in one way, maybe you make them into chickpea nuggets and they absolutely love them, or make a hummus and they can't stop eating it. And then avoid bribes and threats. Now, some tips for adults. Ask for their support, just like Noah had mentioned in one of the tips. Avoid telling people what to do. We generally don't like people to tell us what to do, so we want to share the same respect to them. Avoid confrontational statements. And then again, leading by example. Now, we come across this fairly often, and I'm curious if some of you may have as well. Tips for households with various diets. Maybe not everyone is following a low-fat vegan diet, and especially around the holidays as you're visiting other family and maybe some friends, this might come up. But what's helpful is to make sure people feel like they have a choice in their food. And there's a couple ways of doing this. You could set up maybe a taco bar where you have, beans and a bunch of different toppings like salsa, lettuce, tomato, corn, roasted vegetables. And then if they choose to have meat or cheese, they can add that separately. Or it could be a baked potato bar with a variety of toppings as well. And when you're out to eat, you can decide to order meals that are easy to split. For example, a pizza. You could order half without cheese and meat, and then add lots of veggies to your half, and then have them order what they would like. And then what else is nice, and maybe I know a few people have shared some recipe resources that they enjoy, is finding vegan low-fat recipes that everyone enjoys, so that way you can sit down to a meal and all have the same item. Now, I'm curious if anyone wants to share in the chat if they found any tips particularly helpful for those living in a household that maybe not everyone's following a low-fat vegan diet.
Yeah, I'm hoping that some folks will chime in with some thoughts here, because it can be a tricky one. I think back on my own personal experience and for a time, actually, I was both vegan and living at home. And that was a tricky one, especially because my parents and my mom especially, who had, cooked for me my whole life, I was kind of sending this message implicitly that, hey, like, this food that you've been making for me my whole life hasn't been good enough. And that, of course, wasn't the message I wanted to send. But it took a lot of, being careful and thinking creatively to figure out how to eat the way I knew I needed to without causing her that hurt. So I really have found it to be I think the advice about inviting people to participate, finding recipes, especially when they can be kind of like on that last slide of, maybe just you make them the same and right up until the last moment. And then, if your family member is going to add meat, you just keep some aside, maybe add some beans instead. But yeah, and then finding some recipes that are fun and can be they're like new adventures to cook with your family members. Those all go a long ways. So looks like the chat, we're getting a few responses coming in. Looks like Sue, you say you asked your husband to hide his junk food in his office. Ooh, there's a good idea. I know where he hides it, but you never open the drawer, so you're not tempted. I love that creative thinking. And what else are you seeing here?
Yeah, I'm seeing Lily saying she makes enough and advises the family members to help themselves if they wish. So giving them a choice and providing enough of a big enough of a batch for them to try out. That's great, Lily.
Mm-hmm.
Paula says she loves the idea of a little buffet where people can choose things, and she's saying it might work for her. Excellent.
Yeah, Connie, I love sound. I'm getting hungry reading about your spaghetti dish, and sounds like a dish that just everyone is on board with. Something we all love. Pasta with red sauce, and the Gardein crumbles, I think, are a great alternative to use instead of ground beef or something else.
Yeah, and Marcia and Lee said their extended family always enjoy chili, so another favorite along with the spaghetti. Wonderful. But yeah, we're just keep those coming in. We're going to just get to a little more content, and you'll see this one on worksheet 5. Let me just share my screen. Examining your limiting beliefs. So just take a moment to think about this, and you can also think throughout the week as well. But limiting beliefs are false assumptions about yourself or the world that can inhibit you from trying to make positive changes. So just keep that in mind as we're going through this. One example could be, I don't have time to cook. But instead, you could rephrase this as, I can make simple meals that meet my health goals. Another could be, I can't eat the things I enjoy. You could rephrase this in many ways, but one of them could be, I can learn to prepare foods that are tasty and aligned with my health goals. So hopefully those are just a few examples, but hopefully they can give you an idea of how to examine your limiting beliefs and change them into something positive. In terms of practicing gratitude, we find that this is very helpful. You can write down all you're grateful for. It helps you stay motivated, focuses your attention on what you're gaining instead of what you're giving up. And it's helpful to express your appreciation to others for supporting you on your journey. And it's also important to continue to find joy in the journey, thinking of it as an adventure. Embrace the process, enjoy trying new vegan foods. Don't get discouraged if you mess up, just get right back on track. And always try to focus on progress. If something is difficult, you can make a plan and keep trying. If something works well for you, maybe it's meal planning or certain recipes, take note and repeat. And then know it will get easier over time. And of course, be kind to yourself in the process. And then going back to your why or your main motivators, it could be health, but it could be beyond that as well. It could be the animals or the environment or a combination of the three. We'll quickly go through sources of support. So there's online communities like the Plant-Based Nutrition Support Group. There's local communities, there's family and friends. I saw a few people in the chat saying how supportive their family members have been. And then there's us here. And some more specific resources. We have the Building Healthy Communities. They have a grassroots network of leaders on the community that host different events. We have Food for Life classes. And also Meetup is a great way to find vegan events. Now with that, we'll have a few moments for some questions, and then we'll get to Miss Darylyn.
Okay, yeah, I've been seeing some great questions and conversations happening in the chat. About Gardein crumbles, among other things. And yeah, I think it's the sense I'm getting is everyone has their own set of challenges with, maybe families that don't follow the same diet. And yeah, keeping those motivators really front and center in our minds is a powerful tool for staying on track, even when it feels like it's going to be a challenge in the long term. And I really do think that even if you are in a moment where you feel like this is going to be just a challenge forever, things can get better. Other people will start seeing the positive changes that you're experiencing with your health, and that goes a long ways. So yeah, I'm curious if there are any. Have you seen any questions come in just yet?
Let me see. We have Marcia and Lee ask how to respond to medical professionals bringing up Ozempic, Trulicity, Mounjaro. Yeah, I wonder if, Dr. Becker, do you want to speak to that or?
Yeah, I think it would be great to open this up to the floor as well. If there's anyone who has had this conversation with their physician before, did it go well? Were they receptive to the idea or not? It would be great to hear from people who've lived through this experience and what you found helped. Something that I have seen and found helpful is if you can, provide your health professional with some resources. Say, thank you for all this information. This is personally not something that I would like to take at the moment. I would like to try other lifestyle choices or changes first. Here are some resources about this plant-based diet. I would love if you can look into it and we can have this conversation together. I think it's really important to try and have a conversation with them, educate them at the same time. Remember, most healthcare professionals do not learn about nutrition. And I think if they can see your progress and follow your journey and how your health has improved, I mean, we've seen so many wins in the chat. If you can bear testament to this diet, to your physician, I've seen a lot of minds change when they see progress that people can make by changing their diet. So I would love to hear in the chat as well if anyone's had an experience with this and how that went.
Yeah, do keep those responses coming in the chat. I do want to pivot us right now towards our very exciting guest speaker who's here, Darilyn Berryman. Yeah, put your hands together for her. She's going to share about her own personal health story, and she's just from a really a community that I think she can just speak a lot to some of the topics that we've been talking about today. So Darilyn, I will, without further ado, turn it right over to you.
Thank you so much, Noah, and thank you, PCRM team, for having me here. It's true, yes, my name is Darilyn Berryman, and I'm a member of the Grand Traverse Band of Ottawa and Chippewa Indians, and I live up in northern Michigan on the reservation. And I work at my tribal health clinic. I'm in the billing and credentialing department, but I'm also a food for life instructor. And that's how I have ties to this meeting today. And I would like to share with you my journey and my experience with gestational diabetes. And gestational diabetes is a type of diabetes that you get when you're pregnant. But it may be like an indicator that you may have a type 2 diabetes diagnosis in your future if some lifestyle changes aren't made. And so I'll go back to 2012. I met my husband, Justin, and by 2015, I was turning 40 and we were pregnant. And so I immediately started researching diets and the foods, what would be the best to feed baby, because I just thought I was older and I had to do my best. I had to do extra. And that was where I found the truths of the dairy industry, the horrors of what the cows go through, and then the negative effects of what dairy does to your body. And so we quit dairy. And even though I thought I was eating all the right foods, I had this all day, every day sickness, and I was diagnosed with the hyperemesis gravidarum, which, you just feel sick all the time. And so I was force feeding myself to eat and drink, and I'd have small bites of rice and carrots. And then if I had meat, I just felt even more ill feeling. And it was in this phase that I was eliminating eggs and meat that I was given the glucose tolerance test. And my results were found to be in the gestational diabetes range. Just a little bit, they said, but it was still there. And my OBGYN prescribed me some glyburide and said it was a really low dose and just take it every day and everything would be fine. Well, at my weekly meeting with the midwife, she said, no, I could not be on any medications if we were having the home birth that we had planned. And she could see the look in my face was like, I'm thinking like, what do I do? And she goes, but you can control diabetes with diet and exercise. And I'm like, what? Because in 2007, I had my gallbladder removed, and all my aunts were like, oh, yeah, we had our gallbladder removed, and diabetes would be next. And I thought, oh, yes, I've heard of this. I'm Native American. I will get diabetes. I thought it was just like inevitable for me. And so to hear the midwife tell me that I could, avoid this, I was listening, and she showed me some pamphlets and they all had lean meats on them. And so she knew it was making me sick. She goes, just do your best. And so I chose a pamphlet and basically omitted the meats. And in retrospect, I was whole food plant-based vegan that when I was omitting those products. And so I was testing my blood sugar 6 times a day, once before meal and an hour after meal. And then it just either naturally or the food and exercise, I don't know, I quit being sick and I got to start eating. And I was eating all kinds of wraps and salads and soups and sandwiches. And exercising. That was the most important part. After every meal, my husband and I would walk around the subdivision for at least 15 minutes. And that small walk dramatically affected my blood sugar levels. I kind of thought I was cheating by doing that, but that's the way that you can get your readings down. And so the midwife, after careful review, she said, okay, yeah, we can have the home birth. And so we were planning moving ahead. And on September 26th at 9:32 in the morning, I gave birth and my husband delivered baby because the midwife was at another different birth and the backup midwife was at even another different birth. And so our midwife did arrive within 30 minutes and we had a great time. And everyone is in the pile and hugging, and it was so wonderful. And that evening I was able to eat dinner at home and it was such a wonderful experience that we were able to create. And so moving forward, I'm thinking we were going to live on the reservation so we could learn the language. And in researching best diets to feed baby, I found out that Native Americans are more likely to get diabetes and heart disease and cancers and lots more diet related diseases. And I said, oh, this must have been meant to happen to me so I can educate my fellow tribal member about that they can, thwart this diabetes diagnosis that we all think is inevitable. And so now we live up here on the res. I'm working at the health clinic, which makes me sound like all official, but I'm really just in the billing department. But my health director lets me do classes online, in person. I have written some grants for the state of Michigan and then some other grants, like through the physicians committee and really going and I'm really living the life, right? Well, back in 2022, my physical said that my A1C was creeping up on me. And I was like shocked, like, oh, me, I'm a Food for Life instructor. How dare my blood do that? But it had happened because we were allowing our family out a meal every so often, and they got more and more often. And we had to try everybody's veggie burgers. And those veggie burgers come with fries. And so, the veggie burgers weren't that bad in itself, but the sides were. And so we were just not meal prepping. And we live 20 minutes from town. And we think if we don't eat in town by that 20-minute drive home, like we're going to be starving to death. So we meal prep. And if we know that there's something in the refrigerator waiting for us at home, we're like, okay, we can make it home so we can start eating immediately when we get home. So now we're living the life. We really had to up our fruits and vegetables and beans. We love beans, but we eat even more beans. And so now my son, he's so adamantly vegan. He's so loud and vocal about it. And he tells everybody, and I'm kind of shy. I don't really say, a lot of things unless I'm asked or I have a class, I lead by example. But he is really vocal about it. And so I kind of think that he was just that little vocal vegan in me telling me, no, mom, don't eat that. And it's changed the way that we live. And he's 10 years old now. And I can't be any more proud than he is of him and the way he interacts with his friends. And so I thank you so much for letting me share with my story with you guys. I appreciate it. Hopefully, if you have any questions.
Yes. Yeah. Darylyn, thank you so much. Yes, as you just said, if anyone has any questions for Darylyn, go ahead and put them in the chat or raise your hand. Darylyn, I have one for you. We just talked about this in this class about navigating social situations, and I was really interested what you said about just kind of the expectation that you and maybe others in your community had that diabetes was inevitable. So I'm curious if you sort of how that expectation has maybe presented a challenge or maybe an opportunity for yes, conversations, being in social situations with other people. How have you navigated those?
Oh, yes. So many times people come to me and they're like, oh, well, I have diabetes and it's in my family and I'm just going to get it. And I go, the diabetes is in your family because menus in your diet runs in your family. So if you keep eating the same menu, then it is going to run in your family. If you keep holding on to grandma's recipe with all those animal products in it, and don't change that, then yes, it will run in your family. And it has changed over the years. I had some pushback in the early years that said that we're woodland meat eating Indians and that we don't need to be eating like this. And so I had to do a lot of research that we natives are actually a lot more veg leaning than the colonial reports had reporting, because that's what we have is the history from the colonizers that, they were. So now when I read those reports, I look at them with veg colored eyes and I tell people that we have gardens, there's ancient gardens, they're even finding more and more gardens. In some of the native designs are actually the three sisters in disguise. And so it is a great way to educate when people say that diabetes runs in their family and that they're going to get it. I go, oh, no, contraire. We got the answers here.
Mm. Oh, I love that. Yeah, could you tell us what are some of those recipes or dishes that you feel like really embody your traditional ways of eating, but also that are vegan?
So even up in Michigan, we had corn. We got rainbow corn. It's resistant to the little bit lower temperatures. And so we had the three sisters, and it's mainly in soup and corn soup. But now, we have changed the recipes up and we can make the three sisters corns, beans, and squash, depending on what season it is. There's a corn, bean, or squash for the spring and the fall. You can make soup, salads, wraps, stir fries, and you can all have those three sisters, which if you ate only those, you could survive. They have lots and lots of nutrients with those three different vegetables.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I think we had a question in the chat specifically about food prepping. So does some of these foods work well for meal prep? And what are some of your go-tos there?
Yeah, so when I meal prep things, I try not to put any like tomatoes or softer things in it because it won't last as long. Because you can get 3, 4, 5 days out of foods in the fridge without animal products in there. They last a little bit longer. And so I'll go for, my favorite is it's a quinoa salad. And it has garbanzo beans, black beans, red bell peppers, cucumbers, and lemon juice. And you can do tricolor quinoa or regular quinoa, and you just toss that up in there. It stays in the fridge for a long time. You can heat that up. You can put it in a wrap. You can put it on top of salad. You just need a scoop as you're going by. You can take a bite and get out of here. That's our go-to one. And we make a smoky tofu every week to go with it or next to something. And this week, we did garbanzo bean curry. We did vegetable soup. And I did this huge spinach bake. You put a whole bunch of spinach and garlic in layers and you just bake it down to it's really little, and then cut it out. And it's just like a green brownie, but salty. Not brownie, but it's like you get a little square of salty garlic, but spinach goodness. So yeah, that we love to meal prep.
I've not tried that spinach brownie before, but you're piquing my interest. Curious if you could speak a little bit to some of the social supports that you have or that you've found or maybe even made in your community that help you keep you on track.
Yeah, so the youth group, they're tired of getting my drop the dog flyers every time they have an event. And so when we go to the youth group, because I want my son to hang out with the kids, and we'll bring whatever they're having, we'll bring the veggie version of it. So he'll have a plate looks just like theirs, and he'll pop out, and just be eating with the kids, and they don't even know. And the youth directors, they had noticed that we bring our own food, and they say, hey, this money's for y'all, this food is for you. I'll just buy some veggie stuff. And so just let me know. So the past few times, they've had the Gardein meatballs when they had spaghetti dinner for the kids. We've had the veggie hot dogs, veggie burgers. They always have a veggie option. We went kayaking, they got hummus and dips and all these little fruit assortments. And you know what? All those kids want that too. And so we ended up sharing with the other kids. When the food kind of ran out, they ate the veggie ones just like they were regular ones. So I think I can't believe that I got a veggie dog into our youth group at the tribal event. So, I mean, I'm going to work on the whole tribe, like we shouldn't be paying to increase our chances of cancer by them supporting hot dogs at our events. But I started with the youth group and they already know. So that is, one way, lead by example, include them. They included me.
That's fantastic. And you answered what was going to be my last question, was to maybe give us some of your final tips on talking about this with kids. But I think we all had some great takeaways from that. Wonderful. I think with that, I'm going to give a round of applause for Darylyn. Thank you so much for being here, blessing us with your story, and yeah, just your experience. And I will hand it back over to Em for the closing slides.
Great. Yeah. Thank you, Noah. And thank you, Darylyn. So many amazing things that you're doing in your community. And we really appreciate you being here and sharing your incredible success story. So it sounds like Darylyn has done some great meal prep this past week. And we hope that you'll also enjoy some of these recipes. We have a seasonal one here, roasted Brussels sprouts with apples. And a quick brown rice congee. Sorry if I didn't pronounce that correctly. And then as always, we have our reminders to take a B12 supplement. Also, if you have diabetes and or high blood pressure, keep checking your levels. This is a very, very powerful diet, as we've seen today with people's successes, and always work with your physician before making any medication changes. Then we have a very informative and interesting video, maintaining a healthy heart, eyes, nerves, and kidneys. We saw improvement in sight by Phil, so that's great. You can learn a little more here. And as usual, we have our book recommendation, Breaking the Food Seduction by Dr. Neil Bernard, and another podcast, Plant Strong Podcast with Rip Esselstyn. And our goal or challenge for the week is to share a vegan meal with a friend or family member. So we hope you'll get a chance over the next week to do that. And we look forward to seeing you next week, Tuesday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. We're going to be talking about healthy for the holidays, so that should be a really great topic. And our guest will be Dr. Neil Cooper. So thank you all for joining today, for your participation, and we look forward to seeing you next Tuesday.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.